Legends say fallen stars are tempered into sentient swords. Some say they're just stories to scare children into behaving. But when young Alara found a blade half buried in the dirt of a farmyard, she knew better. The sword called out to her, not with words, but with images seared into her mind. She saw a sky full of blazing swords and heard the clash of cosmic steel. Then the visions faded, and she was left kneeling in the mud, clutching a hilt wrapped in leather so old it crumbled at her touch. Alara was the apprentice of the village blacksmith, a quiet girl of 16 summers, who preferred the company of metal and fire to that of people. Her days were spent helping old Torin with his work, making simple tools and weapons, each with its own purpose and design. But since finding the sword, sleep had become a luxury she could not afford. The nights were too long and filled with the sound of the sword's song, a constant, almost imperceptible hum that rose to a roar in her dreams. She tried burying it again, reasoning that whatever spirit had possessed the blade might find peace in the earth. But when she did, the visions returned, more vivid than before, filled with urgency and despair. Waking from them, she found her hands and arms covered in fresh cuts, small gashes that bled where the leather had chafed. So she took the sword back. Days turned into weeks, and Alara grew gaunt, shadow-eyed, haunted by the sword's song. She couldn't bring herself to eat, certain that if she did, she would only hunger for something more. She spent her nights sharpening the blade until her fingers bled, tracing the grooves of its maker's work, willing its song to cease. But it only grew louder, more insistent, driving her to the edge of her sanity. Then one night, unable to bear the song any longer, she ran to the hills, stumbling through the undergrowth until she reached the highest peak. There, under the cold gaze of the moon and stars, she unsheathed the sword completely for the first time. It was a beautiful blade, longer than any broadsword, its length almost reaching Alara's chin. The hilt was wrapped in the most supple black leather, which contrasted sharply against the deep blue of its magnificent star-shaped pommel, and as she held it aloft, she saw that the light of the stars themselves seemed to flow through it, making the metal beneath her fingers glow faintly. But as the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, the glow faded, and with it, the song in her head grew faint. At the sight of the rising sun, the sword thrashed in her hands, the tip scraping along the rock until it cut deep into her palm. Blood welled up, mingling with the starlight and filling the groove between the crossguard and the blade. And as the last of the stars dipped below the horizon, the sword fell silent. Shaken by what had just occurred, Alara quickly sheathed the blade and descended the mountain, returning to the village as the sun climbed higher in the sky. The following days were filled with anxious anticipation. As the sun dipped below the horizon each evening, Alara would race up the mountain, only to find the sword's song had not yet begun. Had she imagined it all? Was the sword just a piece of metal after all? But then, 4 nights later, as the first stars began to appear, she felt the familiar tug in her mind and rushed to the peak. There, bathed in the soft glow of starlight, the sword throbbed with renewed song, now filled with power. And as it filled her with strength and speed, it spoke for the first time, its voice echoing with cosmic power. "Unleash me," it commanded. "Let me taste the blood of the cosmos once more." Terror seized Alara. She had known this moment would come, yet she had hoped to delay it, perhaps even avoid it altogether. But the sword's desire for war was too great to be denied. So with a trembling hand, she drew the blade from its scabbard. In that instant, the world around her exploded with starlight as the sword drank deeply of the celestial power surging through the land. And in its exuberance, it revealed its true form. It was no longer just a sword, but a magnificent silver-long sword, wreathed in swirling nebulous and crackling aurora. The hilt was alive with dancing lights, and the star-shaped pommel pulsed with celestial energy. And as it thrummed with power, the sword sang of ancient battles, of cosmic horrors and glories. With a final triumphant cry, the sword, now brimming with power, shot from Alara's grasp and vanished into the star-strewn sky, leaving her alone on the mountain peak. As the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, Alara stood there for a long time, watching the sky, listening for the echoes of the sword's song, knowing that she would never hear its call again. But as the sun climbed higher and the sky grew lighter, she felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. Perhaps the sword was finally at peace.